Rates are going crazy, banks are melting down, and people are scared. We don't know what's happening in the economy. So should you buy a house now? Should you wait till a recession comes? Should you just hide all your money in your backyard and not do anything? That's what we're gonna talk about coming up. All right, hey guys, welcome back. It's Eric Sztanyo from Keller Williams Realty and TeamStanyo.com, where we are helping you find your home and strengthen your family. And we have a special guest today. We have Matt Pfleger from Supreme Lending. Matt, introduce yourself, tell the people a little bit about who you are, and give them all the good stuff.
Hey everybody, Matt Pfleger. I'm a regional manager with Supreme Lending. Been in the lending space about 11 years now. Originally from Tennessee and relocated here about a decade ago. Great place. This is a fun city. Yep. And I've come to learn a lot more about real estate here. Known Eric for a few years and we've done some good business together. So looking forward to getting to knowing y'all.
Yeah, so we've worked with Matt for a lot of years. Chances are if you guys have contacted us to buy a house and we say, hey, you gotta get pre-approved. We've sent you Matt's information and maybe you've talked to him, and maybe you will in the future. So we do a lot with Matt. He does a great job. He's built out a great team. You can use any lender. We always tell our clients, you can use any lender you want. We like working with people that we've worked with a lot. We've done videos with Jeff before. We're having Matt on now because when we need something, they answer their phone, as opposed to going up to like 10 layers of bureaucracy and trying to get someone from Rocket Mortgage, which we just had that, and it's like a freaking nightmare. So you can shop around and use rates, but it's also nice to work with a lender that the team itself has worked with a lot. It's a lot smoother generally in the transaction because things come up, problems need to be solved. It's nice to have someone who can get them solved on your side. So, okay, Matt, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about this current economy. It's scary out there. People are scared. I know you're talking to people every day and rates are going up. There's still inflation. Banks are going crazy. How should someone, if they're thinking about buying a house right now, or what are some of the questions you're getting asked most frequently from people who you're talking to?
A lot of questions. You make a good point. I think there's a lot of negative media in the current environment. It's good that we can have this conversation, more of a long format, to kind of talk about what's going on and how to make sense of this and be more of a calm source of information. I think some of the main questions that we've been getting in the short term are, hey, should I wait to buy a house? Yeah. Is now the right time, or should we time this thing out? What are your thoughts on an impending real estate crash, or will values go down in the future? And obviously the most topical question that people are thinking about is, what are interest rates doing? Yeah. Those are probably the three most topical conversations that we're having every day.
So when you're in an environment like we are right now, and rates shot way up last year and they're still going up, the Fed just released another, it obviously impacts you. Offline, we were kind of saying like, of course the real estate agent and the lender are gonna be like, it's okay, you should buy a house. And yeah, we get paid when you buy houses. Before we go into why maybe you should buy a house now, or why, let's talk about why you should. Why would you not want to buy a house or get a big loan right now?
Well, I think the best answer for that is just your long-term outlook. Yeah. What is the goal of you purchasing that property? Is it an investment that you're going to hold a long time? Are you going to flip it? Are you actually just moving to Cincinnati for a few years? Are you actually looking to start a family and live here for the next 20 years and go that route? I think if you're looking at anything short term, 0 to 5 years, I don't know if that's the right move. There are situations where that could work. And of course, that's a conversation that you want to have more in depth to make sure you understand the pros and cons of that. But usually short term is where you want to avoid that situation.
So if you're looking to buy a house this year and move the next, the question is, are housing prices going to go down? Am I going to have to eat my shirt if I buy a house this year at the rates where they're at? And not only rates could go up, but the actual housing prices could go down. Yeah. And we talked about that a lot on this channel, at least in the Cincinnati area. Yeah. It'd be kind of hard to see because we have so low inventory right now to see like a major drop. And we were talking again about depressions, recessions. The only one in the kind of the history of America where housing prices have gone down was the 2008 recession, because housing was the actual cause of that recession because things got inflated. But currently things are so switched around where the inventory is so low versus in 2007, you had all this buildup of inventory. We don't have that now. Housing prices could go down though. Right? Yeah. Anytime you're buying an asset, there's risk involved.
Absolutely.
But to your point, if housing prices do go down because they've gone up so much the last few years, if your goals are more long-term, you can wait it out. So even if they do go down, they're probably going to go back up. That's what we've seen in every housing price chart in the history of America.
Right. You actually make an excellent point. That's a perfect segue. So 07, 08 was actually led by real estate. Obviously, with that being such a dramatic recession, a lot of barriers and rules were put in place to try to make sure that would not happen again. And there's actually an index you can track where right now it's harder to qualify for a loan than it has been in the past 10 to 12 years. So there are not bad loans going out. On the flip side, obviously appreciation's been fantastic for homeowners recently. I think the stat is over 60% of homeowners have more than 50% equity in their homes.
Which is another reason why there's low inventory.
Right.
Because, and I told you, I went to a sheriff's auction this morning because I'm a real estate investor.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 properties there because everyone's got equity. And if you do get behind on your payments, you can kind of cash out on that equity.
Right.
Instead of these homes going to foreclosure, which is what happened in the 2008 recession.
Yeah. And when you couple that with high inflation, this is something that we talked about a little bit earlier. High inflation, things that are tangible or hard assets usually will rise and ebb and flow with the dollar. 2008's a great example when you look at this in the long-term trajectory where values decreased in 07, 08. If you sold 10 years later, you were okay. Yep. You made a lot of money actually. And that's a good example of if it's a long-term investment, I think you're going to be protected, especially in this case, if we are talking about certain pressures for economic recessions, what have you. It's certainly not led by housing. And with builders being behind, less people wanting to sell their homes in the immediate future, inventory will be tight, supply and demand, you would expect to see values go up in the future.
Yep. Okay, we talked a little bit about when you might not want to buy in the short term. That's if you have a short-term outlook. But let's talk a little bit more about why you would want to buy right now. And you mentioned inflation right there. You mentioned if you're renting right now, it's really hard to keep up with inflation.
Right.
Because rent's going up, but you don't have your dollars into anything that's a hard asset that's rising with inflation. So traditionally, real estate has always been an inflationary hedge.
Right.
Other hedges against inflation would be what?
Anything from as far back to the old standard, gold.
Yeah.
Right? And in high inflation, you see a lot of commercials recently.
You see a lot of commercials about gold.
We buy gold, don't we, boy? Gold, who's the best?
Anything that's a hard asset, a collectible real estate, anything that's tangible will retain its value. Obviously, there's different things that go into that. But when you're talking about just that apple to apple comparison of inflation and what the dollar's doing versus that asset, it usually will rise.
So reasons why you might want to buy now instead of waiting to time it perfectly or wait for the recession to hit so I can scoop up the sales is, number one, you're getting an asset to rise with inflation.
Right.
So you're buying a house. You're paying down a mortgage. The value of it is rising as the other homes rise. Like if you would have bought 3 years ago, you'd have been a lot happier than if you were trying to buy today.
Absolutely.
Right.
If I had a time machine, I'd go back to 2012 and buy every single property I could.
So that's one reason. Second reason we talked about is you have a longer term outlook for your family, or you have to move. Like your job's moving here, or your family, you need to be close to family, or whatever it is. Like it's more of a family social reason as opposed to I'm trying to time the economics of it.
Right.
It's another reason. Third reason, and we haven't talked about this, I want to get your question. Rates could go higher.
Yes.
Let's talk about, I got the lender here. Let's talk about that.
Don't freak out. You could even argue that rates aren't high enough.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
Obviously, what the Fed does is not necessarily correlated. I know you have another video that kind of talks about that. What the Fed does on a daily basis or monthly basis is not necessarily tied to what mortgage bonds are doing. However, the Fed is purposely trying to slow inflation down. They are trying to slow the economy down. Obviously, part of that is spending and certain way bonds are trading. And even looking at the bank crashes, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Any sort of economic chaos has the potential, depending on the scenario, to bring rates up or down. And I think there's some pressure to bring those up. But obviously with bank failures and things going on, impending recession, I could really see it going either way. We've been joking a lot, I guess, before the podcast. But the funny thing is, looking back over the past 2 years, there's certainly been, just like everything else in life, you Google something, you find 2 different narratives to support whatever you're looking for.
Right.
So in the moment, you want to focus on your financial situation.
Yeah.
Do you have reserves? Are you financially comfortable? If something bad were to happen, like a loss of employment or a situation where a big expenditure came up, could you actually support that? And if you could, looking at the long-term economic data, buying a house would be a wise investment.
When we send you to someone like Matt and they're running those numbers on your financial situation, you say, hey, you're pre-qualified or pre-approved up until whatever, $500,000, whatever it is. But a lot of times when we see that letter sent to you, the client, it'll say, you're pre-approved of this, but as we discussed, you probably want to stay in this range. That'll be more comfortable for you. That's decisions you have to make for your own financial situation, because clearly rates going up does impact how much house you can buy.
Absolutely.
Maybe a few years ago when the rates were lower, you could buy a bigger house.
Yeah.
But now it's knocked you down and your square footage has shrunk a little bit as to what you can afford. Hey, that's the market we're in. But to your point, rates could go up and you could lose that if you wait longer, it's not crazy that because inflation is still there.
Right.
I mean, they've knocked it down a little bit, but it's nowhere near the 2% where they want to be on an annual basis.
Absolutely.
And so it's very likely that rates could be going up, and up. If you're waiting, like I'm going to time it, and if you're still thinking about a few years ago where like rates were in that 2 to 4% range, and you're like, I could have gotten this. Well, that's true. But if you wait and they go up to 9, 10, 12% or whatever, which they could, you're going to be kicking yourself again. So talk to me about how do you coach people through thinking about timing the market and getting that interest rate just right?
There's a lot of information you can look at, even something as simple as, sociological or psychological studies that they've done on, say, like stock traders. Surveys on that's their job, how good are they at timing the market, and you'll find that they're not much better than the standard deviation of, taking a guess. Real estate is not much different. You want to focus on your immediate future, but the most important thing during a real estate transaction or when you're actually shopping for a property or even just thinking about it, hey, I might think about buying a home in 2024. Let's have that conversation now.
Right.
You know what the roadblocks are, but at the same time, the most important thing, as I was mentioning in the real estate transaction, is communication. Let's go with an example. 2 Mondays ago, that's over the weekend when the bank had the failure, right?
Yeah.
Rates fluctuated about 0.6% in one day. I've been doing this a long time. That is not normal.
Okay.
So as you're mentioning, if things are going to be that volatile, you want to make sure you have someone you trust, communicate with, that has your family's financial goals in mind.
Yeah.
That way, you're making the right decision and you can constantly check in with that person to know what the market's doing.
Yep.
So in the short term, communication during the transaction, most important thing. Long-term outlook, timing the market. I don't know if that's a wise move. I don't know if you'll be able to do that. If you can, that's gravy. But if you can't, you won't be very happy.
Yeah, I bought my first house in 2007.
Yeah.
Oof. like dang it. And then it went down. There's a giant fall. I held it for 13 years as a rental,
Right.
and sold it in 2020, and all was good. So I think that's a good place to stop now.
Sure.
Should you buy in a crazy economy? It's always going to be a crazy, there's always going to be question marks, right?
This is a good talking point.
Oh.
So
I thought we were going to wrap it up.
yeah, well, there's always so many golden
Yeah,
nuggets to pass along. Every environment economically has a different pro and con to it. You remember the past 5-6 years, real estate was white hot.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was selling so fast. I think the highest we'd seen for how many offers on a house was around 60 plus maybe.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. How much are you paying for that property, right? This is a totally different environment. If rates go up, people are a little bit nervous to buy. Maybe they don't feel financially comfortable. Competition decreases. All of a sudden, you can get that same house you were going to pay $400,000 for last year for maybe $350,000 this year. So there's certain things that have pros and cons when you're looking at the market. And of course, with rising rates, are you financially comfortable? If rates go to 10%, you'll be very happy.
Yep.
If rates go to 4%, you can refinance. You do not want to bank on that. Not good advice. You want to make sure you're comfortable in the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But of course, if
You
you
hear that a lot from realtors, though. Rates could always go down.
Yes, which is why plan for the now in the immediate. You cannot predict the future, but of course, if you're sound in the current environment, then real estate could be a good idea because you're going to get appreciation, you're going to get equity, and of course, the ability to refinance in the future. That's the bonus one, but those are the two biggest ones, and of course, you get a tax write-off as well. Not too bad.
Yeah, so that's great. That's really helpful. So I think some takeaways here are fear sells.
Yeah.
There's always going to be some scary headlines out there, and there are some legit things to be scared about.
Absolutely.
Right now, there's some bumpy things out there. But when you're thinking about buying a house or making a big investment, it's helpful to work with some professionals who work in that industry every day, who kind of know a little bit about what's going on in the market and aren't just reading scary headlines. So guys, Matt, thanks for giving us all that useful information.
Thanks for having me.
Now you guys know what to do. Should you buy this year? Should you buy next year? Should you wait to time the market perfectly? Should you wait till there's a recession? Hopefully this content was a little bit helpful for you guys to understand what to do in the market and what's best for you and your family and your situation. That's different for everyone. So appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to click the like button. Matt, where should they go to check you out?
You can go to Supreme Lending Cincinnati, but phone number would be 513-815-8755, or you can reach my entire team at Pfleger@supremelending.com.
We'll put all that content in the description below, all his contact information. So be sure to like, subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
And as a manager, cut.
I mean, Matt's not a YouTube professional, obviously, so we're going to be taking take 3 here.
It's funny because usually I'm pretty good at the one take.
I know, you're boasting about it.
Should I contemplate life?
Yeah. And we'll put all that content in the script. We'll put all that content in the subs. No, that's not right.